This is Troy with +2. I just got back from GenCon. I played in the large event for Star Wars Unlimited, both Thursday and Friday. We had a pretty good tournament. I ended up winning the Thursday event. I went 7-0. And on Friday, I didn't expect to play. I actually just got a ticket like 5 minutes before the event started, so I just ran back the same deck, and I ended up 6-1. I got like totally smashed by a Kylo Yellow round 2, but then after that, it was just games after games. So it was a great weekend. After Thursday and Friday, ended up playing in the Neopets Worlds with my friends on Saturday and just got totally obliterated. But overall, it was an awesome convention, and I wanted to do a quick profile on the deck that we played, which was Mono Han. This deck is super sweet. One of the most fun decks I've played in Star Wars Unlimited. I think this leader just, the ability to cheat resources gives you so many lines and just so many different plays you can do. It's always fun to play the Han deck, and this version of it is super powerful, and I think it's not even really fully understood yet. We were not aware of this deck until Tuesday, actually. I was traveling at the time, so as like a cardboard relevant shout out, I definitely have to thank my testing group, Dylan Sumner, Machi, and Nav. They were really instrumental in giving me kind of the bones of this deck and working on it as I was kind of getting settling in, so that once I was, kind of in my place and ready to go, I had a working prototype built out, and we were able to kind of fine tune it and get the list how we liked it. So huge shout outs to them. They'll be involved, and we're going to be producing some competitive focused Star Wars Unlimited content, focusing on metagame and technical play and all of those sorts of things, because this game has just been so phenomenal, and I've really enjoyed playing it. So without further ado, we can get straight into the cards. So we're here with the cards. I'm going to talk about the archetype kind of in general very briefly, and then we're going to get into the individual card choices and why we kind of went with these for this event. So first of all, we picked a double Cunning deck because it's early format. You definitely expect a ton of Sabine. That's just the most, that's the starting point one. You absolutely know that Sabine is a good deck. You know it's a deck people have. You know it's a deck people will play. So as far as assumptions for the format go, very reasonable to assume we would play a lot of Sabine. As it turns out, I didn't play very many Sabine on Thursday or even Friday for that matter. But if you look at the top cut, you'll see that that was kind of a fair choice to make because it was mostly, the top four was kind of all over the place on Thursday. And then after that, it was just Sabine, 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 Sabine over and over. So what I think pretty much happened was that Sabine kind of filtered out all of the off-meta decks, and then the decks that could beat Sabine, such as this, there was a 30 HP Krennic, which is pretty hard to like aggro down. Those decks ended up doing pretty well, and the results kind of ended up that way. So that's why I played a Cunning deck, generally regarded as having a good matchup versus Sabine. The next kind of consideration was why Han over Boba Fett. I was fully prepared to bring a Boba Fett deck to this event, but I didn't feel like I had a very big edge in the mirror. There are absolutely some choices you can make to kind of establish an edge in the mirror, and if you play really well, you expect to win more games than not. But I felt that this was approaching the game from a different angle. People are definitely like less familiar with this deck as well. And the kind of final matchup thing is that this deck has a better matchup into the kind of blue-green villain decks, just because Falcon can start aggroing them down really early. If you're playing against like an ECL blue-green villain deck, you're really just beating the heck out of them in space. So that's why I ended up liking Han over Mono Boba, even though I think Mono Boba might even be like the better deck overall in terms of card quality. I think as far as this event goes, this was a perfectly fine choice. And this is also like just a super fun deck to play, and like has like the funniest win condition, which is absolutely something you look for in a deck. So that's like the archetype in general. I'm going to talk about the low drops first, making a lot of comparisons to Mono Boba, and kind of try to show where it sets it apart. The Han deck is actually a little more aggressive than Mono Boba, and I'm going to try to show you why by displaying all the low drops here. We're starting with L337. Hilariously, this is kind of just Crafty Smuggler with different text. We have 3 Ezra, 3 Bodhi, 3 Falcon. So the way that all of these cards work together is that your turn 1 plays are usually based around ramping out a kind of above statted unit, usually like Ezra, Falcon, and we'll talk about him more later, but DJ as well fits this description. These are all units that have enough defense to go over something and live, usually producing some additional benefit. And it lets you establish control over the game as early as the 3 resource turn. So that ends up putting you further ahead earlier and giving you an advantage into your leader flip turn. And so that it kind of ends up making the deck a little more aggressive. You're pushing harder earlier, whereas the Boba early drops, they're kind of just there to put pumps on mostly and to stick around and to try to just have a wider board. Again, going into the Boba turn. This deck, you're trying to hit over their units quite often, I feel. So that, I mean, these are all really good. Falcon's obviously the kind of key card of the deck. This card is insane. Pushes tons of damage. Really difficult to interact with. Pretty much the only like good ways to trade into this are like spells. So Open Fire or Power of the Dark Side are pretty much the only easy ways to get this thing off the board. But nobody's really playing Open Fire. It's not a very good card at the moment. I guess Daring Raid and Tarkin Town do it too, but I mean, even all of these descriptions I've described kind of result in this getting in for at least 3. So like, no matter what happens to Falcon, you got something for the card, right? So this card, very, very good. L3 is kind of the other new addition. Being able to smuggle a sticky shielded guy out of your resource is very relevant. It's something awesome to put your pumps on later, just to get lethal in multiple arenas. You'll have like, you know, a ship somewhere and then this on the ground, and it turns out that they can't stop that in one action ever. So very good unit. Very important addition to the deck. Those are the Premier 1-drops. I also played 2 Cartel Turncoat. This was in here mostly for the blue-green villain matchup because that deck is really weak in space. And my theory with it was that going into 4, you could play like a 3-drop and then stick this out there for additional value. It's awesome to fill curve on the Han turn as well because you can also often just end up with like a random resource hanging out. And so sticking this out there as like a pretty decently statted space unit is really good against that deck. It really underperformed because the only blue-green villain deck I played over both tournaments, and probably part of the reason my record was so strong, was just a 30 HP Krennic deck. So then this card actually didn't end up being very useful against them because you're never really aggroing them down fast enough. And giving that deck an extra card is a lot more meaningful than giving, say, Kira an extra card, a deck that you can actually expect to aggro down. The bounty I'm not too concerned about for the applications where this card is good, just because you're a tempo deck, you're trying to just put them behind fast enough to kill them, to where if you're bouncing your card to their hand, you don't really care how many cards are in their hand. They can only play like 1 or 2 cards per turn anyway, especially against the like 1 card per turn decks like Kira or Rey. So the card in hand I don't really mind too much for them. Like I said, this is actually a quite aggressive deck when you end up playing it, so the card advantage you're not super concerned about. Your game plan is just dump hand, push damage, and then if something weird happens and you're in a long game, you start going with the next win con, which is DJ Tech. This is like one of the big reasons to play the deck, absolutely. This stuff is incredibly unfair and demands interaction. It's not like super consistent. You're not going to have this every game. The odds of drawing this combo in a timing where it would be relevant, which is pretty much before 5 mana, because you're really trying to take them off of their leader turn, is about 35%. So it's about 1 in 3 games that you can even attempt to go for this line. And even then, it's not always the correct answer. It's very kind of, by now, known. And if your tech ends up getting destroyed, or if they claim and like ambush it with the lackeys or just throw a spell at it that gets it off your board, then this is just sitting in your resources not doing anything. And you spent your 4 resource turn actually not productively doing anything. So it's definitely an awesome combo. I can even see a world where like the DJ isn't played. Tech by itself is a really insane card because, like I said, your contingency plan is if you get them low enough but like can't end them, just putting this out there for 4 and then just a guy puts them in a position where they have to get this off your board, because if this rides, you're just getting so many free cards from your resources. But if they get rid of it, then your other unit is getting in for damage every turn. So Tech is definitely the better card of the two, but DJ just creates a lot of non-games. So it's very good into like kind of slow decks that aren't really doing much of anything, but as it turns out, those decks aren't very good. So this combo doesn't tend to resolve against the tier 1 decks. Obviously, it's not good against Sabine at all. I mean, sometimes we can try to take them off of their leader turn, but it's not very practical. But this combo is definitely worth including in the deck, but didn't do it all too much. I DJ teched. The only real game I DJ teched like out of my mind was in the finals of Thursday. I DJ teched him both games that I won just because I felt like I had to, because I had no other way of putting him far enough behind to end 30 HP Krennic early enough. So it was just kind of like a Hail Mary play that happened to work out. I talked to my opponent at the end of game 3 on Thursday, and it was like, yeah, I just threw the tech out there and he just had no answer for it. He had all of his mana and just no takedown, no nothing, so it's one of those things. I don't like going for it, but it ends games, so it gives your deck the kind of ceiling and unfair factor that you do kind of want, and that mono boba actually lacks a little bit. The mono boba deck is it's a mid-range deck, so it doesn't have that kind of high power combo outside of Forlom Zuckuss, but that combo has kind of fallen out of favor a little bit. So those are the low drops. I won way more games just playing like a tempo style aggressive deck than like DJ teching people, but it's always a good option to go for. That's kind of the core of the deck here. And then here are the kind of mid-range units that help you curve out and just get through the game. Kira is hand control. She's awesome. It's like regional govern, but it actually does something. Gamorrean Guards is just a big dude that protects your damage pretty much. It makes it so that they can't swing over your damaged unit. They have to go through him first so that you get value out of this. And if this sticks around, then you're hitting them for 4. It was much worse in this deck as compared to Boba Fett. So I might like cut down on one, but it's a good unit overall. And it's actually really crazy to ramp this out against Sabine, just because you go into the Sabine turn with your Sentinel already established. And I mean, there was one game where I like put a Cunning on this and it went to 8-4. They didn't have the ambush K2 to throw into it, so Gamorrean Guard is definitely a good card, definitely worth including. The one random Syndicate Lackeys. This is mostly just here to beat over low power leaders and like low power units in general. Really overperformed. It's great into like Rey, it's great into like Tarkin, but those are like not tier 1 decks. It's good into Sabine, kind of, but usually just trades. Like sometimes they don't like end up buffing their leader, but I feel like a lot of Sabines are just looking to buff their leader, and so this kind of doesn't just go over it, even though it's a low power leader. But great card. I don't know if it's worth maining. It might be unnecessary, but it was definitely good for me over the tournament. The next kind of mid-rangey event on legs is Cantina Bouncer. Absolutely have to play 3. One of the best cards in the decks. It reduces their board and builds your own. It's one of the best cards in the deck for sure, and it's like one of the biggest reasons to play double Cunning. And then finally we have like some of the, I guess you could call them finishers, Smuggle Falcon and Big Han. So the Smuggle Falcon ambush text never came up really, just because at this resource level, there isn't really anything in space you care to go over with this. It was mostly just to smuggle out a huge 5/5 body in space to then put a pump on and surprise strike them for like 8, which by that point is pretty much putting them at death's door. The biggest issue I was finding with this deck over the tournament, and something that I want to definitely think about changing going forward, is that I don't have a good answer to Fire Spray like anywhere in the unit lineup. Like this doesn't go over Fire Spray, it just in fact dies to Fire Spray, which is definitely not good. Like all of your little space guys aren't great into Fire Spray. Like your only answer to Fire Spray is hoping that you're in a winning position by the time it comes out and just putting it back in their hand as soon as they tap out for it. So that was something I wasn't really satisfied with, and I'm not sure what there is to do about it. But the Smuggle Falcon was really crazy. It's huge, and you get it from free out of your resources, which is ridiculous. Big Han is a very powerful card. Hilariously, not that great in this deck. I resource this card way too often for my liking, for as good of a card as it is. And I think the reason for that is you're very rarely trying to go from 5 resources to 7 on your Han turn. You usually have to like play out a card that interacts with their board or like keeps your board safe before you can commit your Han flip or do anything else like that. Saving all of your resources and just trying to stick this every turn is like generally not a very good idea. You have to like put out something like a Gamorrean Guards to make sure that they have to spend resources outing him and not like surprise striking your leader with their Boba Fett, stuff like that. So I was finding it very difficult to actually go to 7 on my Han turn, which is again another reason I was kind of low on DJ. I played this for 7 like twice in the tournament. It was pretty good when I did, but it's just not always something that's a good play to go for. It's enough though. So those were the unit lineup overall. Pretty happy with most of the choices. I think The only card that really underperformed on the day was the Turncoats, but that was because I didn't find the matchups that card was in the deck for. Everything else I'm pretty satisfied with. I wouldn't change very much of it. And then we have the Cunning kind of interaction suite. These cards are pretty self-explanatory. The Pumps, 3 Surprise Strike, 2 Hot Shot, and a Jetpack. This, I guess, is a card that I was very dissatisfied with. It was mostly a holdover from my time playing Boba Fett, where this card was pretty good. In this deck, it's a little bit different because you invest more into your early drops if you're like ramping out an Ezra, and then like trying to put a Jetpack on it on 4, and then this ends up like in your hand. You're really upset because you spent a lot of mana and you used a card out of your hand to get this on the board. Whereas Boba Fett has a lot of like on-play value cards, like a Bazine or something like that, or like a card. Like Bazine's I guess the main one. Just helps turn your on-play value guys into like real threats. So this was much worse in this deck. Your little guys are pretty decent on their own, so I'd probably not play this again. Hotshot was crazy. Just getting a +2 pump out of your resources is like worth it on its own, and then the fact that it sticks around and like threatens more damage on the follow-up is awesome. I was like frequently putting it on. I mean, I don't really like putting it on Tech because it puts a target on his head, and he already is a card that they have to remove, but like he's a huge body, so it's pretty hard for them to hit over it. And if he's stuck that long, it means they probably don't have an efficient spell. So the Hotshot was very good all day. I don't really think 3 is necessary just because Surprise Strike is overall the better card, but definitely worth playing. Some more hand interaction. Spark, this partners with Kira and some of the other card and the Bodhi to make sure that you're always looking at their hand. I put the third in the side. It might find its way back in the deck. It's a very good card. It's like a fake turn 1 play as well, so it just keeps your consistency really high. You're like always doing something. Leia, I consider her a spell. She's basically like the hero version of No Good to Me Dead, just an exhaust on legs. The body is not super relevant, especially because when you're super wide going out of your flip turn, just having this 2/2 lying around, like you're not always able to accomplish anything with it, like trading up into a unit, so it just kind of sits on your board uselessly a lot of the time. So I like it less than No Good to Me Dead, but it's definitely worth playing. You just need ways to put Boba Fett down and Han in the Mirror. And then of course, like kind of mandatory includes Waylay is just good interaction. Cunning is God card, obviously. This card is like ridiculous, best card in the deck bar none. And then Change of Heart just to help finish people, close out games that are kind of scraping across the finish line. I think all of these were fine. It was just mostly the Jetpack that I wasn't satisfied with. Maybe that's like pretty easy slot to put the third Spark back in. I will say that even if I think the low drops in Han are better than Boba Fett, the spells are much worse. You don't have like the powerful spells like No Good to Me Dead and McClunky. It's kind of the trade-off that you get. But that's the main deck. It was 51. I didn't have a whole ton of time to refine it. I would have probably found out some of those like ratio decisions, like the maybe cutting Gamorrean guards or moving lackeys out of the main, something like that to get to 50. But I think playing 51 this game is like acceptable. You see a lot of your deck. I don't really mind it. The side deck was a little kind of slapshod. We didn't have a ton of time to test the deck, like I keep saying. So I'm going to start with the cards that I'm pretty sure are like good and I wouldn't change. I played the 2 Bamboozle and 1 Confiscate for upgrade hate. Another thing you'll notice is a lot of side decks end up like with weird ratios, just because some cards are like redundant but good in some matchups but not others. So like Bamboozle, for example, is upgrade hate, but it's also good against the decks that are trying to like build up a tall unit, like Tarkin, Rey. If you ever, I don't know, play against some deck playing like way too many upgrade, like a random Mandalorian deck or something. It just has like other applications, which is why I opted for 2 of it. Also, I don't expect like the entrenched Frozen and Carbonite decks to be very popular, so I just went with the 1 Confiscate just because it's more powerful into those types of situations. It's like a big blowout if they entrench your guy, and you just get a free unit back that they weren't expecting for 1 resource. So that's those resources. This being able to be cast for -1 was very impactful. There were so many times where I would like tap out and they'd play a Cunning and buff their guy, or they would think their Boba Fett was safe to come out and swing and ready resources, and then you would just throw this out and throw some of your hand out and interrupt their play for free. It's a kind of a niche card, but when it goes off, it's like incredibly worth playing, so good include there. Here's the 3rd Spark, probably again should mosey off to the main deck. Another Syndicate Lackeys just to help with low power leaders and like random decks. This card is great. I might even find a way to put it in the main. All these 5 are super fine. I would not really ever take them out. They're definitely supposed to be in the deck in some way. The next 5 are like kind of just things to try. Tobias seemed really good. It's theoretically great to ramp out against aggro, just because it gives your spells double value. It's huge, hits over things. It's like a good card in general. This card just has awesome text, and I think should probably be played a little bit more. In the Cunning matchups, it's like one of the best things to play in front of a Gamorrean guards, which is something that a lot of people have started playing as well, just because it hits over them and then proceeds to like, you know, contribute to your game plan in other ways. But it didn't really do very much during the tournament, so like it never really got a chance to shine. Put it on my board a couple of times, it was all right, but usually just ended up back in my hand, which isn't very great. And then stuff for aggro, like Smuggler's Aid is heal, but the amount that it heals isn't super relevant. So just like the fact that it was healed and came out of Smuggle seemed really good on paper, but in application, I think the Sabine deck is like doing scary stuff on 5 and 6 now, to where you can't just like try to heal out of range. You actually just need to control board and kill them. So this card probably is not worth playing, but I haven't actually tested it to verify if it was good or not. I never got to actually come up during, I never drew it during the few aggro matches that I played. And then the second Change of Heart. This is again just kind of like a random inclusion. I wasn't sure what to play, so needs a little bit more thought put into it. So yeah, anyway, those are the card choices, main deck and side. Overall, it was a super awesome deck. Was very satisfied with its performance. I think my play could have used a little bit of work in some areas. This is a deck that definitely challenges like your ability to think ahead and kind of your ability to always make the right call. Like, do you go face? Do you control board? It gives you a lot of options, which is absolutely the kind of deck that you want to play. Just as a competitive player. All right, so that's the deck. I just want to give some very final shout outs to all the people that helped me in Indianapolis kind of get around. First out, huge shout outs to Andrew Evans. He got top 4 with Sabine on Thursday. He was so awesome. He drove me around as one of my good friends from playing other card games in the past, and it was so great just to spend a weekend with them. Also, Brennan Falkenberg, he was another like old acquaintance of mine that helped me get these tickets. Like, without him, I wouldn't have been able to play at all. So like, he was actually he came in super clutch. In terms of testing, of course, Dylan, Machi, and Nav for helping me refine the deck and just being there to like kind of push through with confidence and just be like, nope, this is great, just send it. You know, this is a deck that you can definitely play. I was first timing this deck at the event, so that was a little bit tough, but ended up working out all right. And just other miscellaneous shout outs. Always have to shout out my brothers in cardboard, Lucas Sacco and Nathan Mills. You guys are kind of the reasons that I ended up playing card games at all. And of course, always got to shout out Gru and his long nose. So that's the deck. Thank you all for watching, and please stay tuned for more competitive focused Star Wars content.